Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei hui o te kaunihira o ngā roto o Rotorua. Welcome everyone. Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed. We will also have councillors joining us by Zoom. We've got our Deputy Mayor Sandra Kaifong and also Councillor Wang will be online. Also just a reminder to everyone to please have your mobile phones turned off or on silent, and we will look to take a short morning break about 11 a.m. Thank you. Ni hao. I'd like to invite Councillor Maxwell to open up our meeting with the karakia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before doing the karakia to commence our meeting, I'd just like to pay a small tribute to Rob Patterson, Don's brother, who I've just heard had passed away. So, ke te tangi taku ngākau ki tō tuakana, Rob, ke te mihi, ke ka nui te aroha, kuau, ko mātou, kia koe me tō whānau. Ke te koe. Let us pray. E te atua whakatū whera te mai, kia mātou ngā kuaha o te tika, o te pono, o te māramatanga i tēnei wā, i ngā wā katoa. Ko ihu kraiti hoki tō mātou kai whakaora. Amen. Amen. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell, and we all join in our condolences to you, Councillor Patterson.
Kia ora, Don.
I'd like to call for any apologies. There do appear to be none. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just signalling I have to leave at 11 for my brother's cremation.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. We greatly appreciate you being here with us today. Deputy Mayor Kaifong? Thank you. So, may I please ask for a mover and a seconder to accept those apologies? That's moved by Councillor Waru, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest this morning? No? Are there any urgent items not on the agenda? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I just ask, in relation to public statements that have been made regarding the cancellation of the Rainbow Storytime event, could I just seek clarification? The decision to cancel the event, was that based on police advice or our own estimation, please?
Thank you. I'll ask our Chief Executive to cover this.
Councillor O'Brien, the decision was made together. So we had representatives of key council functions together with the police in the room when we made a decision to seek more information from the protest organisers. We reconvened 24 hours later with the police again, and the consensus, including from the police, was based on the conditions that existed, it would be unsafe for us to proceed with the event.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Chair, sorry, through you as Mayor. So sorry, could I ask, so when the police gave that advice, sorry, what is the basis for that advice? That they could not provide security? Sorry, guarantee is probably too strong a word, but they could not.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, there was a combination of their resourcing and the amount of time, sorry, a combination of their resourcing, the amount of time we had to prepare for the event, given the specific concerns we had around security, and ultimately the lack of willingness of the potential protesters to engage with us to understand their plans. So with that high level of unknowns, the police advice, consistent with the advice from our staff, was that at that time it would be unsafe to proceed with the event as planned.
Okay, so sorry, could I just clarify? So when you say police resourcing, are we talking as in bodies on the ground to help protect
the
public end?
Yes.
Okay, so could I ask you, sorry, Your Worship, through you, I'm a little bit concerned. So every time someone says, well, I don't like something that's going on and I'm going to protest, what's going to be the red lines here that we either go ahead or stop?
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. This would not normally class as an urgent item, but given the public interest in it, I've allowed the Chief Executive to respond. I think the answer to your question may come I think there'll be a good opportunity after this to debrief on what happened there. We certainly wouldn't want this to set the precedent, because obviously freedom of expression is also a right of our community and something that this council should support. So I think in order to answer that question, we'll still need to take some time to review what happened and make sure that people in the future are able to continue their events without the risk of others coming in and having them cancelled due to health and safety risks.
Thank you, Worship. And if I have the undertaking from both of you that this will be at least looked at down the track, I'll be quite happy to leave that there. I do just have one further question just to ask. In terms of a duty of care, if I could put it that way, if councillors are involved with, say, an event like this where they're maybe not instigating, but certainly engaging with groups, is there a duty of care on councillors' behalf where public safety and staff safety may come into question in an area like this, to avoid placing staff and the public in a, shall we say, unsafe environment? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Yes, there should be a duty of care, but also we do have a code of conduct that we abide by, of which it is expected, certainly from us in the community, that we will all act with respect and integrity as well. So we'll leave it there. Thank you. Were there any other urgent items to be raised today? There appear to be none, so we will move into our agenda today. We'll start with the confirmation of minutes of the council meeting held on the 28th of February. This is on page 6 of your agenda. May I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the council meeting can be confirmed as true and correct? It's moved by Councillor Kiriopa, seconded by Councillor Barker. Were there any corrections that needed to be noted? Nope, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. And we now move to our financial performance. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to receive this report, financial performance for the 8 months ended 29th of February? That's moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Kiriopa. All those in favour to receive this report, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Thomas and David to overview the report and speak to a presentation as well. We are on page 10 of your agenda.
Good morning, Your Worship and elected members. So my report covers the Council's financial performance for the first 8 months of the financial year, so to the end of February. I'll take the report largely as read, but there are some points in the presentation I would like to discuss. In line with previous months, our revenue is behind our year-to-date budget by 9.7 million. Again, that is largely due to the delay in receiving capital subsidies. So those capital subsidies are currently 11.4 million behind the year-to-date budget. A lot of that is timing, so we will receive the money when the work is done, but at this point we have not received that revenue. And also in line with previous months, some of our user fee budgets are under pressure, particularly around the Sir Howard Morrison Centre, the EEC, and some of our parking budgets. In terms of our expenditure, we are above budget at the end of February, so 1.5 million ahead of budget as at the end of February. A significant portion of that is within our transport activities. So over the course of the last 8 months, we have had to undertake a large amount of repair work that was unbudgeted along the roading network. A lot of that is offset by additional NZTA Wakatahi subsidies, but at the end of February, overall expenditure was 1.5 million ahead of year-to-date budget. What's probably a little newer this month that I would like to discuss is Council's interest expense. So in the annual plan for 2023-24, we had a forecast end of June net debt position of just over 400 million. What we've experienced over the last couple of months is that some of the revenue we were expecting to come in to reduce our debt has not happened. So If we look specifically at the $10 million we were due to receive from the Ministry for the Environment towards the Rotorua wastewater scheme, that hasn't materialised, and also the delay in receiving $13 million from CIP towards our stormwater expenditure that we've incurred with some of those CIP budgets. What that's meant for our interest expense is that with our debt being $23 million higher than we planned at this particular point in the year, that is coming through in our P&L and additional interest expense. And I'll note that on the next page. In terms of capital expenditure, we are $34.7 million behind the year-to-date budget. So there's a number of specific projects that are behind budget, particularly with the museum, with the aquatic centre, and a few of our other larger projects. And noting, of course, that our net debt at the end of February was $384 million, and reminding elected members that our full year net debt forecast for the annual plan was just over 400. So touching briefly on Council's financial performance at the end of February, you'll see that fees and charges remain trending below budget. Rates are ahead of budget, predominantly around the way we forecast for some of our remission budgets. We do have some. We do allow for remission budgets that haven't been requested or drawn down on, and that's resulted in variance year to date. Development contributions only 35,000 behind year-to-date budget. We have had some reasonably strong demand over the last month, tracking where we were the previous month. But the main story and our income being those capital subsidies that are 11.5 million behind budget year-to-date. Within our operating expenses, you'll see the 2.6 million ahead of budget for operating expenses. About $1 million of that is within our transport activity, and that's largely offset with the operational subsidies, but there are some other costs in there within the waste and wastewater activities that are ahead of budget. And the interest expense, as I mentioned before, due to Council's debt being ahead of where we had planned for this point in the year, just resulting in some interest expense. I'll take a moment here just to emphasise that if we take away if we look at our financial performance at the end of February and remove the capital elements, if we take away those capital subsidies, take away those development contributions, we are in an operating surplus position. So we have an operating surplus of about 360,000. I'd like to just mention, take the opportunity to mention there are we are endeavouring to hold that surplus position through the remainder of the financial year, but there are some headwinds emerging, particularly with that interest expense. The longer we do not receive the money from CIP or those capital subsidies, the longer our debt remains elevated compared to where we had planned in our annual plan. And also, just the way that some expenditure had been budgeted in the annual plan, we had presumed to be capital, especially around some of our software purchases. When we've gone to market and we've made a selection with the provider, some of those have turned into what's known as software as a service, or cloud-based solutions, which are operating expenses. So we have some expenditure that we had forecast to be capital in nature that has turned into operating. That is putting some pressure on our P&L. But staff are working very hard to deliver a on budget or slightly better than budget performance for the full year at the end of June. Again, just to emphasise that although if we look at the P&L, it shows that we are behind budget, most of that is due to lower capital subsidies with our capital program and marginally lower development revenue coming in through those development contributions. And at the end of February, Council did hold a $360,000 operating surplus. Lastly, with our capital expenditure, so at the end of February, we had a year-to-date budget of $104.5 million. We had delivered nearly 70 million at the end of February. Again, more than we have delivered in any February position in years gone by, but some of those some of those budgets are, we'd set ourselves a high target, and we're working through with our budget holders how we're tracking towards the end of the financial year in terms of full year delivery. So I'm happy to take questions on anything in the presentation or in the report.
Thank you very much, David. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your report, gents. Just a question on the CIP funding. Is that not been given to us because we haven't reached milestones with the Morey Street dams?
Yes, correct. So that particular project is in a position where we have, for an array of reasons, we've had to do additional work. So once that work has been completed, we're still on track to receive the money, but at a later date than we had planned.
So will that fall within our financial year?
Yeah, those funds are paid on completion, and the completion of that project is targeted for May. So as long as weather and all other things hold and it is completed, we should receive that $13 million subsidy within this financial year. Yep.
Thank you.
Were there any further questions? Yes, Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, subsequent question. Thank you, Your Worship, for your indulgence. The strike that's been going on with Infracorp, we already know things aren't rosy there. Is this going to affect their financial performance again, with them not being able to do their work?
I think that's a question you can ask their Chief Executive, I think, at the next operational update that they provide to the Infrastructure and Environment Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just had a question regarding inflation. I note that the report signals that Council continues to operate in a high inflation environment. Unfortunately, that means costs do continue to remain high. Will we have adjusted what we expect costs to be for the next financial year?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we've made allowances as best we can through the annual plan, through the LTP that we're under, in the draft LTP. The way that some of those contracts work, they're backwards looking. So, particularly with some of those big contracts with waste or with wastewater, the way that the contracts are worded, when they come for cost escalations, they look at indices from the past months. So even though we are trending downwards in terms of inflation, some of those indices are really only coming into play with how those contracts are being calculated. But we are reasonably confident that we've made allowances as best we can for the LTP.
Thank you very much. There appear to be no further questions on the financial performance. Thank you very much. So we will move to our next item, which is the adoption of draft development contributions policy. We are on page 16 of our agenda. May I please have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favour to receive it, please say aye. Thank you. And we will let Thomas overview this report.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, councillors. Development contributions is one of the first, I guess, steps that we're about to take today with regards to preparing ourselves for consultation on our long-term plan and development contributions, and the revision of its policy and charges, proposed charges, is a reflection of the growth infrastructure investment that we have in our draft LTP. So just, I guess, a friendly reminder of what development contributions are. So I do apologise, councillors, we have traversed this a bit, but I'll quickly go through this. They're charges that are levied on new developments, and they're charges that effectively relate to response and infrastructure spend to accommodate growth for those new developments. And so development contributions only look to recover what's deemed to be a fair, reasonable share with regards to investment for both growth in residential housing, industrial, and also commercial. They are applied under the Local Government Act, and it's a fairly stringent rules with regards to how they're set, what we can recover, how we charge. and they are different from financial contributions under the Resource Management Act. And just to remind ourselves that we do also have financial contributions, and they're tied to predominantly our open spaces and that investment into those community amenities and reserves and parks. And the majority of councils have development contributions, and those in particular that are facing high growth demands leverage this policy and the ability to charge DC significantly. So within our long-term plan, there's approximately $200 million worth of capital works targeted at growth. You recall a big portion of that is into the stormwater space, and so if you take that 200 million, you look at the components that are funded externally, and that's predominantly IAF. How much, there's a portion of that growth that also relates to general specific growth across the network that can't be targeted to individual regions in that. So there's a rate or a general contribution to that, and that leaves a final cost to be recovered from development. And so with that, of that 200 million, we are looking at recovering $73 million directly from growth that is expected to occur not only in just the next 10 years windows, because while we're talking about an infrastructure spend in our LTP of 10 years, some of this growth might occur in 15 years and 20 years, but a reminder that the investment needs to be taken up front, not after the growth occurs. So we do have a current policy introduced in 2021, and we knew that coming into this next draft long-term plan, there was an opportunity to have a look at certain elements of that. In particular, we have seen a significant uplift in the level of capital investment into this draft annual LTP, and also looking at mechanisms with regards to how we can fairly charge and allocate those costs going forward, and in particular in a response to, we know that there's significant work going in to free up development and intensification in the central and western catchments, and ensuring that the policy was adaptive to those, or adapting to those. As a friendly reminder of how we calculate development contributions, so we do it on a household unit equivalent, which is effectively the core unit of demand, and everything gets calculated back to that. So we have estimates of what a average water, wastewater and stormwater implications are of an average household unit equivalent, which is effectively, if you think about a house, and we use that to calculate both the equivalent in non-residential as well, and that's used as the basis of understanding what the impact of that development is on growth, and therefore how that development contribution charge should be. From a simple perspective, if someone develops and has a section and builds a house, they pick up one set of development contribution charges. If someone does a greenfield development or industrial and commercial, that development is converted through to understand what that is on a like-for-like basis on a household equivalent, and that's charged. And if there's a brownfield development with regards to reutilising what's existing there, we do calculations with regards to existing credits versus what that new development is, and the developer is charged just on the change rather than the new. And so that's what the policy allows with regards to how it works with regards to a very simplistic view on charging. The costs themselves, they're allocated on catchments, and so some of our infrastructure have quite large catchments, like our water network is treated as one, it's all interconnected, and so therefore the development, so the infrastructure spend to accommodate for growth is spread across quite a large catchment that's based on that water network. Wastewater is very similar as well. It's all one interconnected development, with probably the exception of the individual Rotorua scheme, whereas stormwater is more isolated catchments tied to stormwater networks supported by some of our rivers and streams that are flowing into the lake, and so they have much smaller and tighter catchments with regards to how that our investment benefits the flow of that stormwater in that catchment. So this is the current allocation of our water and wastewater, and so it is just reflective of where the network actually sits and ties. So it's predominantly the whole wider interconnected network. And stormwater, as you can see, is under our current policy broken into 5 distinct catchments. And so they are. So in doing the LTP and engaging some expert advice with regards to it is a complicated policy, looking at making sure that it is fit for purpose. We are looking at changing 2 key elements of the policy. So not only is the policy reflecting the new investment that sits within our LTP, we're also looking at changing the methodology on 2 aspects. The first one is the stormwater areas. So it recognises that some of that investment actually crosses multiple of those catchments, and so looking at an opportunity to make those 5 catchments a bit bigger by consolidating some of them in. And then there's methodology of recovery with regards to using a cash flow basis one, where it recognises that if you, as I said, council does the work up front and then looks to recover the cost of growth as that growth occurs. The current methodology just has a flat line calculation whereby if that cost divided by the number of growth, you pay that same amount whether you do that growth in year 1 or year 10, whereas the cash flow basis provides a cost benefit to those that do the development earlier versus at the tail end, because it recognises that the council and the community has a cost of holding that debt, and so therefore if you do the development later, you will pay a slightly larger portion, which reflects the holding cost of doing that project. And I think I've just covered these off. So with regards to the catchments, you'll see there that we are proposing to go from 5 to 2, and that's a reflection of the underlying investment in our capital works, and in particular there is work in both those, in all 5 of those historical regions that crosses boundaries and benefits both, and so there's recognition that the catchment should move to 2. And the second one being the estimated cash flow benefit. Hopefully you can read this, but what it does highlight is that those that do developments in 2024, sorry, I can't read that, will pay less than those that do developments in 2034. And so that's that reflection over the 10-year period of this LTP, that there is benefit in those developers doing the growth earlier than later, and that just reflects the holding costs that council and the community has of that debt that's associated to that infrastructure spend. So where to from here? So we do have the draft policy to adopt. It will go out for consultation as part of our long-term plan, and feedback on that will be incorporated into the long-term plan hearings and deliberations. And then the policy will be finalised in conjunction with our LTP, just recognising that there is a bit of a thread that goes through both our infrastructure strategy, our draft long-term plan and our development contributions, and so these are all sort of intertwined a little bit. And so with that, happy to take any questions that the members may have.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just having a look at page 4 of this draft document, Thomas. We're looking at the introduction, paragraph 2. The purpose of this policy is to ensure that a fair, equitable and proportionate share of the cost of growth infrastructure is funded by development. Is fair, equitable and proportionate, are they synonyms or do they have distinct meanings, and if so, what?
Through you, Your Worship, I'll allow Thomas to reacquaint himself with the wording and answer the question on
I guess they do have distinct meanings. What was the section again? Sorry, I'll just...
Paragraph 2 of the introduction. That's page 4.
I guess the purpose of the wording is to recognise that at its core, there is some investment into growth that has a wider benefit to our networks that can't actually be specifically targeted to individual developments. And so it recognises, therefore, that within our wider portfolio of investment, that there is a portion that will sit with the wider ratepayer that recognises that investment into our core network to accommodate growth might not be targeted versus where there is a targeted, so developer A may do a greenfield development a couple of kilometres from our network, that they do pay their fair share with regards to extending that network to meet that demand. And so that's ultimately around how that wording is done, to recognise that there are differences that need to be accommodated.
Okay. So in paragraph 4, reference is made to Te Ture Whenua Māori Act, 1993. I guess this is the Maori Land Act, is it?
You're welcome to Google that, Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Just at the end of that section, it says that to this end, the development contributions specifically excludes from the requirements for development contributions any applications made by iwi for resource or building consents, service connections, authorisations or certificates of acceptances that apply to marae development. When we say marae development, does that include Papakainga?
Councillor, I think, just to remind ourselves, we had this discussion in our workshop, so just for the benefit of everyone. So the policy itself excludes any development to the main whare, and that just recognised the significance and importance of that to not only the hapu iwi, but also the wider benefit to our communities, exactly the same as places of worship and assembly are also excluded, but what actually is included is Papakainga, any development to abolition blocks, and to the wharekai as well. Those have been captured with the policy.
Sorry, that didn't quite settle in my head. There's a Papakainga going up the end of Owhata Road.
So yes, if that Papakainga is within the catchment of a policy, then that would be captured and they would pay their fair share of DCs, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Question from Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thomas, just reflecting on one of the points you raised about calculating the development contribution for a particular, let's say, site. Just for the benefit of those watching, on Malfoy Road, at the intersection of Malfoy and Old Topol Road, just back from that, there was an old villa that was demolished, and now there are, I think, 4 units on it, and mostly concrete, very little green area at all because of the size of the section and how many buildings are on it. So calculating their contribution for that based on the stormwater runoff that you would get by having that whole site covered in concrete and buildings. So they would pay a particular level compared to anybody else who just built a standard 3-bedroom home with backyard grass?
Yep, so I'll give 2 examples of this. So in this scenario where you have a residential property that is removed and you put 4 residential properties on, they'll get a credit for the one that was there and they will pay 3 new ones if it's a residential. If it's a commercial development though, and say I've taken that house off and I'm building a motel with 5 units on and we cover the whole thing in concrete, then it goes into that calculation with regards to areas, and what you may find is they may pay a larger portion of the stormwater contribution because of the impervious areas. And so you would find that they'll still get credits for what was there, but they may pay a different amount based on the impervious area than what a residential development would have.
Right.
So there is sometimes a subtle difference.
Okay. And then I noted in the report it also talked about encouraging the development of smaller units on properties, e.g. granny flats being added to the back of a section, etc., and so they are being charged less. Is that right?
Correct. If those dwellings are less than 72 or 73 square metres, then they will pay a half charge. And so that recognises there is opportunity to intensify and encourage alternative housing for our people. And so, yeah, it recognises that because they are smaller, it is a smaller demand, and therefore that charge is reflective of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any further questions on this? Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Thomas, for your report and the policy. Just to clarify for those that may be watching, this approach that we're taking, the cash flow approach, is this something that other councils use? And how do we compare roughly with others that are using this approach if they are?
I think it's quite mixed around New Zealand as to the approach. I guess this is you move up the sophistication scale when you do use this approach, because it creates a little bit more work, but it's probably a bit fairer with regards to developers going forward. So, but I don't have the detail of across New Zealand what the percentages are of who uses what, unfortunately.
No, thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. There appear to be no further questions on this. Thank you, Thomas. So we do have some recommendations to approve. I'll read them out first before asking for a mover and a seconder. That Council approve the draft development contributions policy with the recommended changes to be consulted on with the community during the course of the Long-Term Plan 2024-2034 consultation. And thirdly, that Council notes that this policy will be published in conjunction with the Long-Term Plan consultation document following its adoption. Do I have a mover and a seconder for these motions? That's moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Brown. I'd open that up if there are any further discussion. There appears to be none. This has been very well covered. I'll put that to the vote, and I ask if you please raise your hand. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Wang. We noted your votes through Zoom. So that has been carried, and we will move to our next item. This is our big one, our long-term plan adoption of the consultation document. We're on page 22. May I please ask for a mover and a seconder to receive this report? That's moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Lee. All those in favour to receive, please say. Thank you. I'd like to invite Una and Thomas to overview this report and to speak to this presentation. And I do just want to acknowledge the extensive amount of work that has gone in from our staff to collate the feedback of elected members, and of course the time and the efforts of elected members ourselves, as we have spent many months bringing this together. So without further ado, we'll hand over to Una to cover this off.
Kia ora, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for those opening comments. So good morning, councillors. Today in front of you we have the consultation document, and we are seeking a decision to adopt the consultation document and to commence the next phase of the LTP journey, which is going out for consultation and seeking public feedback on your draft long-term plan and your proposals within it. So just taking a little bit of time to reflect on what is the LTP 2024 to 34. So it's a plan that sets this council's direction. It also sets the budget in which you line up that direction towards, and also the work plans that are contained within all of that. The plan itself connects delivery, so what you are going to do, to your community outcomes that you have established. And it defines the levels of funding that are required to deliver this plan. All in all, that then should promote a better Rotorua for all. So just going back to some of the principles that we discussed right at the beginning of the long-term plan journey, and there's some guidelines that we look to work within when council are setting out on their long-term plan journey. And I think if we were to take each one of these, I think the council could be confident that yes, you have used these guiding principles to then produce your draft LTP. And ultimately, through the consultation document, are establishing what we call as the right debate to have with the community when you go out with your consultation document. And also remembering that this is a long-term plan, so it takes a view across a 10-year horizon. So the decisions that you have been making to provide and deliver services and projects within your long-term plan are decisions today, but they are actually decisions for the next generation and generations to come. It's been a long development journey. It started back in September and went right through pretty much till the beginning of March. There's been 14 workshops within that journey, of which you've traversed a number of areas, service levels, projects, funding sources and the likes. And that has culminated in the draft LTP. So just a quick sort of re-look at the timeline. As we said before, we started back in September, but the main emphasis from here on in is following adoption of the CD today, you'll go out for a period of a month of consultation with a significant engagement program within that time. There'll be some hearings, and then based on all of the feedback that you'll receive, you'll spend time considering all of that and making decisions which will go into a final LTP. Adoption of the final is set for the 26th of June. Just to recap, I referenced a couple of slides back about the development of community outcomes. So these are the areas where focused delivery within those key areas and council wishes to focus on. So there are 9 community outcomes. These are referenced in the consultation document, and we've got a couple of engagement events planned with young people in particular to get their feedback on the outcomes, the priority of them. If they were in your seat, which of the outcomes would they see as the focus area for council? So I think that might be some interesting feedback to get. I'm just going to hand over to Thomas. He's going to now take you through the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, councillors, it's a good reminder of the environment that this LTP was drafted in. So for myself, this will be the 5th long-term plan that I'll help contribute putting together. And by far, it has been the most challenging. And it's been the most challenging in recognition of the environment. So we have come back off the back of probably the highest inflationary environment that we've had for close to 20 years. Interest rates as well. So that's off the back of the fiscal stimulus that the world central banks put in place and how the world and economy responded to that. Focus as well on resilience of our service provision, and it's sort of tied to the resilience of our infrastructure. Climate change is real. We experienced that last year with regards to the multiple cyclones that came through our region. And what came out of that, and so those of you that were audit and risk and saw what came out of that with regards to the insurance costs for not only New Zealand, for the world, and just the need to ensure that our infrastructure is appropriate and is capable to deal with the challenges that are ahead of us. And on top of that, the reputation of Rotorua. So we have come out of that period of post-COVID and some of the challenges in our community safety, and also housing for our people, and needing to respond to that. And in particular, the inflationary environment has created quite a significant challenging environment for us to prepare this LTP. And so to help us navigate that, we did create a decision-making process for yourselves to work through, and we effectively had above the line and below the line. And above the line was priority 1. And so what we said is that there are things that we have to do for our community and things that are non-negotiable. And so we have to fund our organisation appropriately. We have to fund our renewals. We have to respond to CPI, contractual obligations, legal and regulatory as well. We saw in the previous years a lot of additional regulatory demands coming out of central government for us as well. And we had to make sure that they're funded appropriately and we have a balanced budget. But then on top of that, you had a number of other priorities. And so, and what we did was we identified that there were those council priorities around priority 2, and then we also had community demands that fell out of, and we made those priority 3, and those were changes in our level of service. And then went through a process to say, well, if we have our baseline and those are non-negotiables, then what are the other things that we'd like to include and talk to our community about? And went into that decision-making process that therefore created our final draft LTP, but recognising actually that the environment and the challenges, that not everything could be included, and so therefore we will also talk to our community about some of the things that have been excluded and why. And so the consultation document therefore covers both those priorities. At a glance, it's a multi-billion-dollar investment across the 10 years. So average rate increase of 5.5 across the plan, but it recognises that the first 2 to 3 years in particular, and dealing with the challenges of that high inflationary environment and also the investment needed into our infrastructure with regards to meeting those demands is reflective of our debt peaking by year 4 of the plan and having higher rates increases in those earlier years to respond to inflation and that capital investment, and then tailing off towards the end of the plan. There are some key discussions that we're looking to engage with on our community in the plan, and so the first one would be the inner city. So while we allowed for an additional $60,000 a year of renewal work into that space, there is being the question asked and around whether a significant investment needs to be made into that space in response to communities' expectations. And there's a discussion posed around whether there's an approximately $10 million investment sitting in years 4, 5 or 6 of the plan, which therefore allows the council and the community to engage on, if it wanted to do that investment, identify what those opportunities could be to then fund into those future years. The Aquatic Centre is on track to hopefully reopen the indoor pool in May. And asking the question of our community around stage 3, that is that more community public amenity space around water slides, maybe learn to swim facilities, splash pads, manu pools, those sorts of elements as to where the community sees those priorities and where we could potentially invest. Pensioner housing around a community housing provider, are they best placed to look after that asset and those people for our community. Development contributions, which we've talked about. Operating within our limits, there are some reductions in some of the funding that is proposed funding that being available to our community, in particular around community grants. And then also asking the question around rating, short-term accommodation in particular, around appropriate fair rating for Airbnb. Changing the way that we rate vacant land, so where vacant land currently gets a discount on serviceability on some of our fixed charges like water and wastewater and refuse, to say actually you need to pay your fair share and hopefully encourage those landowners to do developments going forward, and also having a discussion around setting of the capital rate and lump sum contribution to the Rotorua sewage scheme residents, which also has a flow-on effect to Tarawera, and that's asking that question around that $1,500 wider contribution to their schemes and as to whether that should be different. So that's at the heart of the conversation of our LTP, but in around that there's obviously still significantly more to include that no doubt people will provide feedback on, and in particular our infrastructure spend. So uninflated. There's a $551 million spend across the 10 years. You'll see from the previous LTP to this one that there is a significantly more investment being targeted into the stormwater, and that's recognition of the challenges that our community has. And also into securing our water supplies. There is a number of supplies that are requiring resource consents, renewals, and also ensuring that those supplies remain compliant and secure going forward. The spread of that is, I guess, lumpy towards the start of the plan. We do have a wastewater treatment plant upgrade underway. The IAF Infrastructure Acceleration Fund is targeted in that first 4 years as well. And those water supply resource consent renewals also sit within that first portion of the plan. So there is an element of lumpiness with regards to where that capital spend sits and where it is needed to do. That's a really hard graph to see, so we'll just skip over it. And so within that, the infrastructure overall, our total infrastructure spend is about $791 million. So the difference there is obviously into public facilities and amenities, and in particular around our renewal spend to look after what we've got, and inflated that comes to about $881 million. So the LTP itself, I guess, has a little bit of a golden thread that I think I've talked about before in the previous one around they go through a number of key strategic documents, our infrastructure strategy, our LTP. And one of those is our financial strategy and making sure that it is coherent and it's fit for purpose. And so this was a good topic of discussion in our workshops. And so the focus of the financial strategy has been strong emphasis on maintaining our existing infrastructure, so ensuring that we are funding our depreciation expense, which provides that funding for our renewals, and we are looking after the assets that we've got. We're also providing adequate capacity to respond to growth of our district, so recognising the growth demands, and we're able to, we know what the infrastructure is needed to invest in that, and we're funding it appropriately. Delivering in our community outcomes, so making sure that our services are fit for purpose and are delivering on the community outcomes and their expectations. Being good stewards of assets, balancing delivery and affordability, and in particular, like a strong emphasis on affordability. Prudent use of debt, so recognising where debt can and should be used, and as it being repaid and recovered appropriately. And so for us, debt's only used to support growth and specific level of service improvements, such as wastewater treatment plant upgrades and those sorts of elements, and maintaining appropriate headroom. And that was one of the challenges that you set us with regards to recognising we have to use debt to fund certain aspects, but trying to build in more borrowing capacity into the future, recognising that the future is uncertain, and that in particular was around ensuring that we're generating sufficient surpluses to retire debt accordingly and create more borrowing headroom for the future. So the key elements that did fall out of that was maintain affordability of rates, and I have to say that was one of the most challenging aspects of this plan, particularly falling out of the high inflationary environment that we've just experienced over the last 18 months in particular, and it is still there, which is why the Reserve Bank hasn't looked at reducing the OCR, because inflation still isn't within the bands that they expect. Utilising debt for key projects to improve our district, so supporting growth, and in particular some key infrastructure investments into the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, expanding the network to Tarawera as an example, but also into our key water network, and maintaining below a 250% limit of debt. And remembering we've set ourselves an internal limit of 250%, and within the plan there's about our debt peaks in year 4, and there's about a $40 million buffer to that, but recognising that as an organisation we actually have a higher external limit of 280%, and so ensuring that we stay below our internal limit, we have capacity to respond to the challenges that we have going forward that we may not be aware of. Rates themselves, with the has changed to 10.2 in the first year, and that's a response of the challenges to the Moray Street Dam and the timing of that. And then just below 10% or 9.8, and 7.8, my apologies, very hard to read that screen. And then towards the end of the plan, tailing off. And that's, there's a risk there, and there's a reflection of that into the future years. There is an expectation that the high inflationary environment comes off, and that is driving those rates increases into the future years lower, but also around the capital spend. And I guess not knowing what the future may bring, there may be a need to respond in our infrastructure space to future challenges, which may have an impact on those not only borrowings but also rates into the future years. So with regards to our debt limit, so we do have that buffer, and as I said, I think by year 4 we do get close to our internal debt limit. So the red line is our external debt limit and the green is our internal. And so it does peak and get close, and then as that significant investment has been completed and take place, start to bring back our debt back down and provide larger borrowing capacity to respond to the challenges of the future. And with that, I'll just hand over back to Una with regards to the consultation process.
Thank you. Okay, so based in seeking and hopefully getting a decision today to go out for consultation, the team have put a lot of effort into working up an engagement schedule in order to make it as easy as possible and encourage the community to share their feedback or to provide their perspective. There are many ways in which the community can do this. It can be the traditional old written form, so there's a number of ways that can be done. There will be a bit of a survey form, questions on the Let's Talk platform. The community can also pen a letter into the council if they wish. The community can give the council a phone call, and there'll be staff that will be available to record and listen and take down people's feedback. Community can email us in, they can use Facebook. There is a little bit of a caveat with Facebook in that we will provide the Facebook to yourselves so that you can see themes in that, but we can't reference them back to like an individual or a real human, for want of a better word. So they won't come across in terms of the same format as the other feedback forms, but we do acknowledge them as a valid piece of way that the community can provide feedback. There's also going to be many opportunities for the community to meet with yourselves and for them to provide feedback. And there's also what we're looking to introduce this time. So this is a little bit of a trial. We haven't done this before, but we're providing submission support. So if you feel that providing feedback to the community is a little bit of a scary thing to do, you will be able to drop into the library where we will have staff there who can record or help you to write a submission. They won't be guiding, I'll just make that very clear. They're just there to help support people and provide another channel of which the community can provide their input. We're also asking people to get creative, and we will accept these as well. So if young people in particular aim to engage, it could be a photo, it could be a TikTok, anything like that. So hopefully we've got a range of channels there which anybody can engage with, and hopefully will do so. So the engagement period will open on the 4th of April and will close on the 6th of May. Just to note that in that period we do have the Easter break and we also have the school holidays. So between now and of course the 4th we've got Easter, so hence we're opening up for consultation after Easter so that we can maximise the period of April. In that time, there are 24 events that have been scheduled, all supported by yourselves over a period of the 32 days of consultation. So, councillors, that brings us to the end of our presentation and the delivery, I guess, of the consultation document. Both Thomas and I are happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Were there any questions on the consultation document? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. The document that's been supplied to us is not finished, right? So will there be a step where we get to see the finished document, even though we're asked to approve it today?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So the consultation document that we provided to you late last week was to give you an idea of the look and the feel of the consultation document. The design team are putting the final touches on the document today. Over the next couple of days, we will have independent eyes going through the consultation document to check to make sure that all of the figures align to the model and everything that you have been discussed. And then we'll also make that available to yourselves prior to publication on the 4th of April.
But the vast majority of the content of what's in there is confirmed. It's really just the look.
Correct. Yes. Design. Yeah. The content itself does not change from here on in. You have all been a part of the development of that.
Thank you, Councillor Waru.
Oh, kia ora, te manukura. No, I'm okay. Councillor Brown asked my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, followed by Councillor Barker. Oh, apologies. Sorry. Councillor Maxwell, Patterson, then Barker.
Thank you. To Thomas and Una, thank you for the report. The question I want to ask is, Thomas, you said vacant land and you want to see people pay their fair share and all that. Well, they're not getting rubbish collections, they're not using water, and I know we have a certain rate for that. So I think, in fairness, many of the ones I've been talking to are already paying for rubbish, water, and all the other things where they're staying in time to when they're going to build on their own vacant land. So I think it is good that we don't say pay your fair share when they might already be doing that.
Thank you. I think we'll take take that feedback on board. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions, if I may. The CV, have we had that yet?
That has been one of the challenges. So the district revaluation hasn't been completed just yet and is on track to be completed in the next month. And so what we haven't been able to model is the rating impact of the capital value changes. So we are loading a rates calculator online. And as soon as we get data available from our valuers on the impact of that, we'll try and share it with yourselves and the wider community as well, but not currently available.
So just to clarify, there is a good chance that some of the properties that we have listed in the lower CVs or wherever they might be, that rate increase will increase. It won't be.
There's a 100% chance that when the revals are applied, that all the rates where properties currently pay will change, and that's a reflection of the way that the reval will distribute the general rate. Yes.
So has that been communicated to the community?
So it's in the CD and also included in commentary on our rates calculator. I think it's fair to not assume that it'll go up because of a reval, because within a reval there are ups, there are downs, there are the sames, and there is a significant amount of change. Yep.
Thank you. And the other question I had was I raised following the meeting I attended over at the LG&Z Zone 2 meeting recently, the fact that the government has signalled that if we ask, we might be able to shift money from the CIP project or the no, not the CIP, the shovel-ready projects. And also I suggested that potentially we could ask if the government would consider letting us dip into our IAF funds to cover the issues at Morey Street. Was any of that ever considered?
So we haven't received any guidance from, I guess, government officials. We have contracts in place and we're delivering against them. But in saying that, the government at the moment is, I guess, having a stock take of what it's doing, and if they come out and give ourselves opportunities, then we'll explore those. But at the moment, we're adhering to the agreements that we have in place. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed in your presentation you talked about the lake subsidy potentially being adjusted for inflation, and also the capital rate for Rotorua. Now, it's possibly me, but I just don't see it anywhere in the consultation document. Is it in amongst the other? Or if it is, can you lead me to where it is, please?
Possibly, if you were looking through the design document version, it wouldn't have been in there. If you refer back to, we put just a plain text copy in. It's in that, and it's under the Your Rates section.
Thank you. That's where I got confused. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Waru.
Thank you for your indulgence. He te marukura. Tēnā kōrua, thank you for the presentation. A couple of questions that came to my mind as people were talking. So, Thomas, can you explain for me the part in here in the long-term plan where it's at the 5.5% average rates increase across 10 years? Can you just, I suppose, expand on that a little more, please, so it's clear in my mind what that actually means?
So that's the individual rate increases for each of the 10 years added together and then divided by 10 to give an average across the 10-year period. And so what it recognises is that we've got some challenges up the front, and in particular like in year 1 with 10, but then towards the tail end with regards to a lower inflationary environment, less capital investment, less demand, lower increases averaging across the plan to 5.5.
Thank you. I knew there was a formula to it, so thank you for that clarity. Also, just touching on the vacant land kaupapa. If I give you an example, for example, there's a bit of whenua, bit of land there that's actually being used, let's say, for a car park for a marae. But it's not the marae whenua, it's owned by an individual for family. Does that fall under the same kaupapa as everyone paying their fair share for vacant land?
So it could, remembering it comes down to serviceability. So if there's a water network and a wastewater network that runs in front of it, then they'll already be paying a 50% contribution to that. So it's saying we should pay 100%. And so, yeah, there is, we expect a bit of feedback on this, and so that, you know, that's something that you'll have in your deliberations with regards to the feedback on this. And so there might be some unique circumstances such as that, but what we're also aware of is within particularly the tighter urban area, there are a number of sections that actually haven't been developed that have been sitting empty for a very long time, and seeing as whether this is an opportunity for them to encourage to do some development and also just paying their fair share. Yep.
Just supplementary to that, so does that include also land that was maybe identified for a particular purpose under the Ministry of Works Act, things like that, and now have been returned or reversed? Does that fall under that kaupapa as well?
It could do, but also remember we have a, particularly around Māori freehold land, we've got remissions policies and all those sorts of things. And so while we're saying that this is the base rating, there are other policies like remissions policies, etc., that would look to correct that rating. And so it's not a blanket, you will just pay more. There's a number of other mechanisms that we'd need to work through for individual properties.
Thank you, Thomas. I only ask because I get, they're already starting to come, the questions. So, kia ora.
Thank you. There appears to be no further questions. Councillor Barker.
Thanks for your tolerance of my second question. Actually, I wanted to ask the question around funding for renewals of community halls. I know there's been this incident arrives in the last few months. It's happened after this process was begun, that has placed us in a position where our community buildings are not in a great state. I note that there's $200,000 each year put aside in the community leadership space for community hall renewals. Is there any other further funding available in this long-term plan? And if not, people can submit on this point and ask the questions. Can you just give a bit more context around that, please?
Yeah, and we'd be encouraging the community to provide some feedback on that. So the plan itself has seen an uplift in our investment on the previous plan, but there's a wider question as to whether it's sufficient or there should be more, and we'd encourage people to provide feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that appears to be all of the questions. So what I'll do is I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, and then we'll open up for discussions. And I'd also like to invite our Chief Executive to provide some comments on this as well. So do we have a mover and a seconder for the motions? And I'll read it out. That's moved by Councillor Waru, seconded by Councillor Barker. I'll read it out. That Council approve the Long-Term Plan 2024-2034 consultation document for the purpose of public consultation. That Council note public consultation commences on the 4th of April and shall close on the 6th of May. That Council approve the updated draft 30-year infrastructure strategy, draft financial strategy, 10-year financial statements, prudence graphs, rates policy proposal changes, and list of capital projects for release alongside the consultation document on 4th of April, and those were attached to your agenda as well. So we do have a mover and a seconder, so I'd like to open up for a round of discussion. But first of all, I'd like to invite Andrew to provide some comments on this.
Thank you, Worship. I am quite new in my tenure here, which actually allows me to say this without claiming any credit for it whatsoever. And that is to say, just getting to where we are now, a consultation document that's had 14 workshops, and hopefully through the discussion we'll agree broadly represents your views, is a fantastic achievement given the current challenges that exist in New Zealand broadly, but specifically in local government. So I might take this opportunity to thank you, thank the key staff, and actually there are many of them, you've seen a few, but thank them, and then thank you all and the leadership you've provided to be able to get here. It's actually no mean feat at all, and and coming in from outside, I can see that sometimes you don't get your head up to recognize what you've achieved in a very, very challenging environment. So I thought I'd take the opportunity while I'm still new and can take no credit for that whatsoever to say congratulations to you all, and looking forward to the debate. Obviously, this is just approving the document to go out to the community, so your final decision on what happens and what rates are struck will come in due course. But look, just acknowledge that getting to this point is really, really well done, great leadership and great work by the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Was there any discussion on this item? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had my words taken out of my mouth by the Chief Executive. I just did want to acknowledge the staff, and the work that they've done doesn't happen automatically. It's a significant body of work and up to a high standard. So there's timelines that have had to be hit, and we have to hit those timelines to get the LTP through. And so hats off to Una and her team, and Thomas and his team, and everybody else that contributed to the drafting of this document.
Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I've seconded this motion, and I too would like to acknowledge, as everyone else has, the hard work that's gone into this. It's actually been a really challenging space. We know that we've got significant infrastructure renewals and maintenance to keep on with our big portfolio of assets. You know, $1.9 billion is a lot of assets to keep up to speed, let alone to allow for the growth that our district needs. Taking into account all of the inflationary and interest and depreciation challenges that we do have, we've had to make some difficult decisions or adjustments in the fact that we don't have the resources to do everything that we want to do. And as a rural councillor and a representative for the rural community, I'd just like to express some of the feelings that I suspect will be going on out in the rural community when they receive this consultation document. And it's around the what I would see, and perhaps the rural people might see, as business as usual spending, which is not happening, and that's around the rural street improvements and rural seal extensions. These are things that are core infrastructure responsibilities that will be the way the rural community sees it. And I really look forward to actually hearing their feedback on this particular aspect in particular, because, you know, it's something that is probably very dear to their hearts as well. It's also part of our key strategic outcomes with resilient communities and economic and employment opportunities. It's these are important aspects of keeping our district running well. So I look forward to what the community has to say about those particular aspects. And the other one that I'd like to highlight that I think is key in this document that may be up for consideration by the community is how we support our community boards. I feel like they are our key connection with our community. They are the people that are on the ground feeding back the information to us as councillors and council. And so to be challenging them with reduced spending is also a very challenging space for them to be in. And I look forward to the feedback on that. On the whole, though, as a representative of this district, I'd just like to say and thank my fellow councillors for the work and the consideration that they're given to all these aspects in a challenging situation, challenging environment, and just like to commend the team on putting together and draft at least a very good document that should be easy to engage with by the community, and we look forward to seeing what that engagement looks like. So thank you very much, and I support this.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Don't mean to rain on the parade. Councillor Barker spoke about representing the views of the rural community. Personally, I'm concerned about the views of the people in the areas who have no voice, who will be looking at their rates bill, which will be around about over $4,000, which when you break that down, and this is GST inclusive because they don't care whether there's GST or not, it's just what they have to pay. $84 a week to live in their own homes. And of course, that's then going to be kicked on to those who pay rent, and they will be seeing an increase that they can't understand and they can't afford. We make a lot of assumptions in our long-term plan, and we saw the outcome of an assumption that was made on the Morey Street Dam that is now costing an extra %. The option of deferring the LTP and adopting a special annual plan and waiting to see what the government policies could offer us was not given any consideration at all, as other councils have done. No effort was made to investigate, even talking to the government, as offered by DIA, to start shifting money around so long it was related to stormwater projects. They don't care. Just so long as it was stormwater, you can take money from that pot and put it in another pot. That was never even investigated. That could have helped keep our rates down. So personally, I'm also disappointed that I know we're constrained by what we've inherited from the previous council, but it felt to me like this LTP is nothing of ours. All we're doing is carrying on what we've inherited. So that's quite disappointed. So in closing, I'll say I won't be supporting this. I think we could have done better. But I guess, once again, I'll register my protest vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I do want to note that while that's your personal opinion, there are some comments in there that may not be correct, in particular around the changing of funding and in particular around infrastructure as well. So I know that our staff have worked incredibly hard. We've managed to secure a significant amount of funding, but we do note your concerns on that as well. So were there any other comments or discussion on this item before we put it to the vote? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, I took the supportive statements for Una and our team, executive team, as well as the many staff that have put a huge amount of effort into that. Unfortunately, Your Worship, I will not be able to support the document going out. For me, it would be almost endorsing the current statement as is. I appreciate we're saying we're putting it out there for feedback, but I heard that last year, and a document that I didn't really fully support changed very little, and I would put it in my concerns around various aspects, the rate rises in particular and the debt levels. We came here to change things, not business as usual. And with all due respect, I heard some of my council colleagues over the past previous months, including when I wasn't here due to illness, say that we've got to be careful we don't kick the can down the road. Fully appreciate that, and that's a very important argument. But I also didn't come here to kick the can down the road, but I didn't come here to kick people out of their homes either, because they can't afford the rates. We've had a I think some of us made our oppositions to last year's AP very loud and very clear. This document, unfortunately, in my opinion, has failed to address some of those concerns. I do regret the fact that we did not look at perhaps postponing the LTP till next year and just doing an AP to give the current water choices that the new government, coalition government, is putting in place. I've made it clear before, I think the water choices and some of the statements that we're going to be impacted on are going to be very large, probably very costly, even just on an admin side. And I regret that we didn't take an opportunity to already start that discussion. There are lots of other things as well, Your Worship, but for the sake of brevity, I'm afraid I have to signal I won't be supporting, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Were there any other comments on this? Councillor Kaifong.
For their indulgence in the way in which those workshops were conducted. But having said that, I think we also need to take into account that we are not here to debate the issues today. Whilst we don't necessarily all agree with what is in the draft document, what we are doing is providing a document for the community to provide their feedback to us on. We've had a pretty, I think, definitive series of workshops where we've actually drawn the line on the priorities, and we've been pretty sharp where we've said, like, these are the things that we can only focus on delivering in this challenging financial environment. So it's not a question of kicking the can down the road, it's a question of looking at what is the level of service that we can actually deliver within the current financial situation that we have. I don't think that it's wise for us to simply wait and see what a potential government might do. Yes, while some of us may be hopeful that there may be some good news coming from the government as to what might happen with extra funding and other changes around infrastructure, Three Waters, but we can't wait for that. We've already had a challenging annual plan discussion where we've tried to go out to the community with a level of service cuts, which the community obviously weren't happy about. So I think that in this situation, we've gone out with a document that is the best that we can do in the circumstances. It's obviously not what we're all happy about, but it is an opportunity for the community to give us their feedback and for us to then take that into account when we make the decision later on. So for now, I would urge my fellow councillors to adopt the recommendation, CD and the other draft documents.
Thank you for your comments, Deputy Mayor. We'll go to Councillor Wang on Zoom and then Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would echo the comments of Deputy Mayor Kaifong as well, and thank you for the other comments around the table, but particularly thank you to the staff for getting to this point, like Councillor Kaifong said, in a very difficult environment. I think in a perfect world, we wouldn't be going out with any rates rise, but we're not in a perfect world, and I'd really commend all the work that's gone in to be able to get us to a position where we frankly are in a better position than many other councils across the country, where I know are facing rises in the high teens and even in their 20s. And so for us to be at this point with going out for consultation with this figure, I think is hugely commendable to the work that the staff have done to not only try and to achieve those efficiencies, but also in that smart investment around our infrastructure and growth, which is so important to the future of our district. But I guess like Councillor Kaifon said, at the end of the day, this is just us agreeing on whether or not we go out to consultation with these documents. And so for the community to provide their feedback, their opinions, to help inform us, and so that we can make an informed decision later down the track when we do, or not approve this LTP. But as we did see in the annual plan, those community services are so important to our community, and we heard loud and clear from them. And so I think for this LTP and with those associated documents, it's so important that we do, keep that in mind. The investment in infrastructure, it's vital to the growth of our district, to the future of our district. And, I heard the term around, the kicking the can down the road and that as well. We'll never solve those issues unless we actually front it full on and we actually try and address it. And, I do believe that we are on that path. It's a huge beast. We won't be able to solve it overnight, but we can, chip at it one bit at a time. And I think we are heading in that direction with the proposed investment in this policy. But I think I'll just leave it at that, and, absolutely in support of going out to consultation on this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. I'm mindful a colleague needs to depart very soon, so we'll take the final comment from Councillor Maxwell. I'll provide a brief comment and then we'll put this to the vote.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. I moved, so I was reserving my right to speak last, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just under the circumstances of Councillor Patterson needing to leave at 11, you can wait? Okay. We could put this on pause if you'd like. Okay, thank you. We'll carry on. Councillor Maxwell, myself, then Councillor Waru.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is going out to the community, as has been said by the others. For me, I want to hear what the community's got to say, come back. There are some things in this that are going out that during the 14 workshops that we had that I didn't support or I didn't approve or I didn't like. But I'm not going to stop the process going ahead because of one or two issues I might have. The community might have a different view to me. And also criticising previous councils. We're halfway through our term and already there have been many occasions when if the majority didn't carry our recommendations through, boy, I wonder what the community would think about us. They'd be criticising us. So I will be supporting the motion going through and wait for the hearings in May, the deliberations, and then see what we're going to adopt later. Some of the comments that have been said by my colleagues overseas, I support some of the things that they've said as well. I'll give an example. For the first time in the long time that I've been here, this is the first time that we're putting pensioner units, pensioner flats on here. And I thought, what are we doing that for? But let it go to the community for them. I feel for the 152 units that are out there now. I don't think they're going to have a say or come to any of our meetings, but nor they. I'll be supporting the motion that's going through, and I hope the majority help us carry it through. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to provide some comments? No? Okay, I'll provide my comments and then hand it over to the mover. Look, thank you very much, everyone. I think that it is a good thing that we don't all share the same views, that we challenge ourselves and that we challenge what is really the best decision for our community. I am very happy that we are shortly going to be going out for consultation, because the voice of our community and their opinions is actually what matters most, and that's why we're here. I acknowledge that this is an incredibly tough time, but that is why we're here. And that is why we get up and we come here and we debate these issues and we make sure that we make the best decision for our community, because it is about them. And we acknowledge that there is an increased cost of living crisis in this country. And while we can't control all of the factors of that, we can control how we decide to manage that. And I am proud of the fact that we are continuing to invest in our community, and particularly the critical services, of which the majority of this is. So in order for our homes and our people to get clean water in their taps, to get their rubbish picked up, to flush the toilet, to drive, to walk, to run on adequate pavements and trails within this community, I think is something that we need to keep our focus on, that we don't let our community fall apart, that we continue to invest in essential services well. Half of the rates increase that we have is inflation. That's the nature of the challenge of which we're dealing with. We gave our staff a very difficult challenge to keep rates below 10%. We were very close to that. Everything that we're investing in would be considered essential, and we look forward to hearing from our community on whether they want us to invest in anything else, because that question is also there. It's no surprise to my colleagues that there are areas like hydroslides they would be delighted to deliver for the community. But that's why we go out with the consultation document, to ask our people, this is what we want to do, but will you be happy to pay that price? So we will hear feedback from the community and we look forward to it. But I want to echo the many comments thanking our staff who have put the time and the effort, and no doubt far longer than what their normal working hours should have been, to make sure that we've been able to reach this point, and it has been much appreciated. Thank you very much to my colleagues as well. And I'd like to hand over to Councillor Waru as the mover to conclude this discussion before I put it to the vote.
Thank you. Just quickly, thank you to the exec, or the key players who worked hard to put it. It's been a moving target the whole way through, still, and hopefully it's going to come of its, become still right now. A lot of work gone into it. I like the look as well. I think it's a nice fresher look, and that, the visual thing has a lot of power and how it comes across. Also, I'd just like to make mention, if I don't think there's anyone on this council that agrees 100% with everything in there. If we did, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. So I think, nothing wrong with the good kōrero, but don't forget the main kōrero is coming. So when the community make their whakaaro known, then we'll have some other things to have a kōrero about, and some other things to think about. I do feel aroha for all those that, will look at it and go, oh, auwe, taukiri e. Hoi anō, there's sometimes we're talking about in the past, well, this is going across the whole country, a lot of councils, and I've said it many times, didn't make bold decisions or brave decisions in times gone by, and now we've got what we've got. And I suppose te o kōrero I roto te ao Māori, he manako I te koura I kore ai. Wishing for a crayfish doesn't necessarily get you a crayfish. There's a lot of mahi to do behind the scenes to get that. I think you will get my drift there. So, kia kaha tātou ne. Also, I'd just like to say, and I am a little bit disappointed that we didn't involve our partner, Te Tatau o Te Arawa, more in this kaupapa. Nā reira kai te miha tau kia rātou. I have no doubt though they'll make their kōrero known when the submission time comes, when the hearing time comes. Also, I would have liked to see a more active role for our youth council in all this kaupapa. Well, I think we missed an opportunity for them to sit around and see what what all this is all about. So maybe during the times when we have those hui that have been scheduled, maybe there's some scope there where we could maybe talk to a few of the members there to join us. I'd like to see that. You know, we talk about passing on mātauranga knowledge. Well, we need to actually start showing that a bit, I think. Also, and just lastly, I know there's still some things to do in the document, but I just want to say it'd be good if there's some consistency, and especially with te reo Māori me te reo Pākehā, both languages, using the same words, well, with the same things that are, you know, through the document, so our people, our community don't get mixed up as to what we're talking about. But other than that, I think, you know, on the whole, it's a very good document. And I don't agree that it's sort of the same as the last one. I've read the last one, and there are some big differences in there. So that's just my opinion of it. But hoi anō, kei te tautoko i te kaupapa, I moved it, so obviously, yeah, I support. Kia kaha tātou. Can't wait for the feedback.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to put this to the vote. I've read it out already. What I'll ask you to do again is to just raise your hands, either for or against. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Thank you very much. That is carried. So what I propose now is we'll take our morning tea break. We might just take 20 minutes to give everyone plenty of time. So we will come back at, how about we come back at 11:30? Thank you very much. We'll see you then. Break. We will now get into our progress reports on our agenda. We are starting on page 26. May I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the progress report corporate services? That is moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour to receive, please say aye. Thank you. And I do just note that Councillor Patterson and Deputy Mayor Kai Fong have departed, as they did give their apologies for. So we'll now hand over to Thomas Colley to overview his progress report.
Thank you, Worship. I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions the members may have.
Thank you. We are on page 26 to page 36. I'll just give elected members a chance to get there. While elected members are having a look at that, Thomas, I did just want to ask you a question on page 30 around information management, in particular with the introduction of AI in the workplace. Council officers have been drafting a generative artificial intelligence policy and procedure document. I do note that the report says that this is to ensure that use of AI is ethical, lawful and in compliance with all applicable laws, regulations and complements Council's existing policies. My question just was whether this was a restrictive policy to reduce or manage the use, or whether there is also an opportunity to look at where appropriate artificial intelligence could actually help with the efficiency of what we do. I do note that in the same report we have noted issues with response times for our customer service in particular. While they do a fantastic job, that is an area where other councils have been able to use AI to more promptly assist people who contact the council to either receive the information or it to be passed on to the appropriate person more efficiently. So just a question around that, whether it was from a restricting it or
Investigating introducing AI into our online chatbots, so that it obviously helps with regards to directing people to the right places, helping them apply online, and the automated responses with regards to our FAQs, but also restrictive in that when staff may be using a chat GTP or whatever to undertake work, that they need to be aware of certain things around copyright, appropriate use, not just relying on what comes out of it and checking it and so forth. And so, yes, it is there. It recognises we encourage it, but where we do use it, it's appropriate and appropriate steps are in place.
Thank you very much. Were there any further questions? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. Thank you, Thomas, for your report. Thomas, could I just ask you on page 29, as I have it, as part of our agenda, the Energy Event Centre hydrogen sulphide gas, that's, let me guess, you were going to ask that? Sorry to beat you. Could I just ask, is that an elevated risk, or is it just because that building, given its location, has long time had issues? Could you just explain what that is referring to, its appearance on the report? Thank you. So it's a known risk there, and it's a well-managed risk. What this highlights, though, is that we did have a new instance occur, and so I guess I can expand on this one, is that we're currently doing some tidying up and renovations for the Energy Event Centre, the toilet blocks, etc., getting ourselves ready for quite an important conference that's coming to Rotorua in, I think, late May, June. That meeting's one. We're encouraging people. And within one of the office spaces, as we were doing the renovations, there was some cracks found in the floor, and where hydrogen sulphide at pretty minimal levels was coming through, and so that was found, and we're just addressing that. But the building itself, as I said, is well known with regards to its location and hydrogen sulphide, and so yeah, that just identifies we found an instance and we've dealt with it. Yep.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Waru.
Thank you. Te manukura, other than the one that Councillor O'Brien pinched from me, my question was around the one council kaupapa. Says here, you know, completed projects, the focus is now on unlocking the value of the one council platform. You know, from my view, or correct me if I'm wrong, we've been on that kaupapa for a while now. When exactly do you see these, the value being unlocked and being easily, I suppose, seen or evidenced in the way things are operating at the moment?
We're seeing it already, and so a good example will be the stats that we saw over last month with regards to the use of our document management system. I think we had a 5 times increase with regards to the capture of our documents in ECM. So by having that one version of the truth and consolidation, it's there, had that going forward, and it's a continual investment, which we've talked about in the LTP with regards to our online presence, the ability to do online, having that one system version of the truth, everything integrated, allows us to work smarter and better for our community. But yeah, just a recent example is that ECM. We are planning to do a significant upgrade. So we have 2 product releases every year from our supplier, and so we are looking at moving to the latest product, and with that as well comes enhancements and more functions and features, and so we're able to leverage that as well going forward.
Just supplementary question to that too, please. With regards to the health and safety kaupapa, you know, when you look at the graphs there, you know, August up, next one's down, going into November, it's up again, sort of goes down for a little while, up again. What is that in correlation with? Were there more events at that time, or something? Why it's on page 29 of the report.
Yeah, that's just the frequency of the inspections. So we did have a bit of a period where we did have some staff changeover. We've got a new individual there, Jessie, who's taken, you know, accountability and responsibility for that area and is looking to make improvements. And so just recognise that. Also, I guess in December, January, we are closed predominantly for a period of time, so it recognises that shutdown. But we will see an uplift in the number of inspections in particular, and that team have got a really strong focus on ensuring we're more proactive than we are. We are proactive, but even more so with regards to engaging with our contractors and their health and safety and doing inspections to ensure that we're not only keeping our staff safe, our community safe, but also the contractors and their staff safe.
Okay, so I got in my head, this is just a direct reflection, I suppose, of the of staff or the team doing more inspections.
Yes, and we are expecting that will increase going forward as they do even more in that space.
Would you say that was probably the level we needed to be at anyway?
Look, what is the appropriate level for health and safety? Yeah, and you can always, I think when it comes to safety for people, I think you can always try and do more. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. One of my pet hobby horses, page 28, the employee turnover retention numbers. I've asked previously what would be an appropriate benchmark, and we haven't really got there, but I think obviously the graph shows improvement, but how are we performing as an organisation against other like organisations? And it may be one for the CEO to consider or answer.
Yeah, through your worship. So I'd like to consider that as part of our risk workshop on the 9th of May, because staff turnover, and particularly key staff turnover, is a key enterprise risk. And I hope that we can explore at that an appropriate target is. I think the appropriate target is effectively your risk acceptance threshold, and what we choose to accept is basically a function of what we're willing to do in terms of mitigation. So let's explore that at the 9th of May workshop, if we could, Councillor Brown.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any further questions on this progress report? There appear to be none. Thank you very much, Thomas. So we will now move to our corporate planning and governance. May we please have a mover and a seconder to receive this? It's moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. I'd like to invite Una. Una to overview this report.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So, councillors, I am just going to take my report as read today, largely because a fair bulk of the progress report has actually been covered today in us presenting to you what my team has been up to, which has been the development of the draft long-term plan and the consultation document. But equally, my team in the marketing and comms space have been extremely busy as well, and as promised to you, a couple of months ago we said that we would come and do a presentation to you on the results of the piece of work around Te Kimihanga. So I've got Suzanne McNichol here with us today, our Marketing and Communications Director, and she's going to take you through that presentation. So I'll hand over to Suzanne. Thank you.
Kia ora, good morning. Thank you very much for making time. I'm sorry I ran down here. You're running a very efficient meeting this morning. Well done. As Una said, we have been working very hard in the marketing department trying to gain a better understanding of our community. And the reason we obviously want to do this is so that we can hear from our community, not just about what they think about living in Rotorua, but about what they think about our council, where we're doing well, where we can do better, and to help us set a little bit of a course for the future. Right. So I gave a little bit of a presentation late last year and talked about the research that our marketing team would be doing. There's three parts to this. The first is a residents' experience monitor, which we are in field for at the moment. So that's what you would call, I guess, a customer satisfaction survey. So that's one piece of research that is running with our community at the moment. The second is a residents' panel where we will be going to our community with forward-looking pieces of work, asking them to feedback on things like, I don't know, the inner city renovation, for example. And the third is this beautiful piece of work called Te Kimihanga, which means the search. When we look at communities and we look at people, age, gender, life stage, and all those things is not just enough. We are so much more than any of those things. The reason we wanted to do this community survey was to understand, as I said, thank you, people's motivations, behaviours, and our use of communications channels in order to reach them better. So this is at the heart of authentic communication, giving people information in relevant language and meeting them where they are. So the objective of this was to create groupings of our community based on the above, and therefore to make communications from council more relevant and accessible. Now, to get to these groupings, we had to run quite an extensive survey, and this survey gave us a lot of information that we can now use for other purposes outside of our marketing communications. The fieldwork, the survey was in field for a month from the 13th of October to the 14th of November. I'm not going to labour this, you can all read it, but it was a very extensive campaign. We also did a little bit of targeted marketing to try and increase the youth participation and the participation from men. What I will say is that the whole campaign cost us, I think, less than $300. So we'll start with I guess the less interesting bits first. We can see that it's a female skew here at 62%. So the total number of responses we got of completed surveys were 1,242. That makes it a very significant piece of research for a community with a population or district of a population of around 76,000. Those of you who have done a little bit of work in market research or marketing will know that women are more likely than men to fill out these surveys. And you can see that we've got our age brackets here. So not surprisingly, youth were only 2% of our sample. They represent, so you know, 9% of the Rotorua district by census data. And we can also see that a lot of people are what we would politely call middle-aged, being in that 35 to 64 year bracket. So I hope no one takes that the wrong way, and I include myself in that. What we can see here is work and time use, and very interestingly, 47% are in full-time paid work. We can also see that 17% of our sample were retired, and interestingly, 19% put down that they were bringing up a family. What I will note here is that this was a multi-option answer, so you could answer that you were in full-time paid work and, like most women, bringing up a family. So, our results. 81% of our 1,200 odd people are homeowners. These homeowners are predominantly aged 35 plus. Not surprisingly, home ownership is higher amongst low deprivation suburbs, so people with more money are likely to own a house. But still, of that sample, 70% are in high deprivation, high social deprivation, so I want to leave that with you just for a second. Our over 65s were the most likely to live alone or to live with a spouse or partner, and we found that our solo parent families were more likely to be Māori and Pacifica and to live in high deprivation suburbs. Multi-generational households were more likely to be Māori and to live in high deprivation suburbs. And this was something that I was really thrilled by, was that 22% of our households speak Māori at home, and this is most likely among the younger respondents. So we can see the increased use of te reo in our community. Right. So, there's a long deck on this, but what you need to know is that we captured a very good spread across all suburbs of Rotorua, including rural areas. My marketing manager, Kath, and I went out to Rerewhikaitu, Reparoa, Ararimu, all around the place, and using QR codes and Bitly, we got good spread across everywhere that our people live. Only 30% of our respondents were born in Rotorua, and this was higher amongst the under 35s, and 37% grew up in Rotorua. And then a further 20%, like myself, spent some of their childhood here or came to Rotorua on holiday as a child. 77% of our population have lived elsewhere in New Zealand, and 53% have lived overseas. What you need to know about all of this is that the place of birth or where their childhood was spent did not show meaningful differences in how people feel about Rotorua. So people who were born here and stayed here are no more or less likely to feel positively or negatively towards the district. Right, the good stuff, the themes. What's good about Rotorua? Overwhelmingly, 62% of people cited our lovely natural environment, the lakes, the forest, the mountain biking, the walking trails. And Te Aroa Māori were most positive about the Rotorua. These people were more likely to cite community, whānau, home, culture, and the fact that Rotorua is a tourist town with tourist activities as one of the things that they really love about living here. What needs to change? Right. Okay, so 76% of our respondents said that Rotorua was a little or much worse than it used to be. Of those, 35% identified the need to reduce crime and the impact of gangs as one of the things that were impacting their enjoyment of living here. Reducing the homeless population, or the out-of-town homeless specifically, was noted by 27%, and needs to improve the CBD by 18%. And then you can see the other stuff around, keeping the city spick and span, reducing litter, mowing and maintenance as something that 16% of respondents identified. The sort of problems of dangerous drivers, motorcyclists, was stated as a problem by 42% of respondents across a variety of neighbourhoods, but more likely in high deprivation suburbs such as Fordlands and Kotu. Barking dogs, litter noise and problem neighbours also got about 20% each as a source of irritation. Interestingly, 15% felt their local neighbourhood where they lived wasn't safe, and a third of respondents, though, and I need you to think, said that they've had no major problems. Right, looking at what our respondents thought was the main job of council, 48% said keeping Rotorua running, the water, the waste, the planning, the tidying, the governance, so stick to your knitting, I guess. Another 37%, community wellbeing, ensuring a safe and enjoyable environment, addressing issues related to safety, good public spaces and access for all. And then again, not surprisingly, infrastructure, so local roads, paths, parks, what was referred to as the three waters of stormwater, wastewater and drinking water, and new projects. We asked a series of questions about how the council is serving the community well, and a third mentioned top of mind that council were delivering infrastructure, services and events well. 27% of our community mentioned beautification and maintenance, so the lovely gardens that we see throughout the city. 13% mentioned community engagement and communication. It's important to note here that these were unprompted. We didn't give people a list to tick. This was top of mind that came out, so I want you to just be aware of that. 11% of you stated leadership and governance, and this included positive comments about the Mayor, about the Council, around improved perceptions of transparency and having a plan. 9% mentioned emergency housing reductions, so the fact that they felt that there was an improvement there, that this was also reflected in positive scores for housing developments and for community safety. So that's the good stuff. What I've done here, and for those viewing at home, I'll just talk through that. We split out the 4 questions that we asked our survey participants are: what are you happy with? What does the council do well? What's overdone? Like, what do you do too much of? What are you worried about or want to know more about? And what you don't know much or are not bothered about. So again, without labouring this, most people are happy with walking tracks, the library at 72%, safe drinking water from the tap, which is something not to be undervalued, and again, our parks, reserves and gardens. We can see, if we go to the box underneath, that 85% of respondents were really concerned about community safety, that the maintenance of suburban roads was an issue for 64%, and that stormwater infrastructure was something that a lot of participants need to know more about or need some reassurance about. Finally, you can see housing for the elderly at 56%. Interestingly, when we say, I guess, what does council do too much, in your opinion? There are certain people who don't believe that the council should be spending as much time on footpaths, shared paths and bike lanes. I think we know who those people are. And performing arts venues. People who are not arts supporters are less likely to understand the investment by council in the performing arts. Likewise, parking, 14% thought this is, something that's not that important. And then, strangely, building consents, resource consents and zoning. So I think what you can take from that, though, is that we have an education challenge. We need to actually get our community to understand, through improved language, through improved tools, why building consents, resource consents and zoning play such a critical role in the shape and the future of our city. So I guess that's putting, for want of a better word, a bit of sexiness into the future development strategy and some of our long-term plans. And at the bottom, people who really didn't know much about council's role governing cemeteries and crematoriums, welcoming new residents to Rotorua, community centres and halls, and the Eyesight Visitor Information Centre. Really interesting themes here, so just picking up on use of facilities. We can see that larger households, families, multi-generational and Māori have much higher propensity to use facilities. This includes swimming pools, sports fields, markets and playgrounds. And that people in our more affluent suburbs had a higher usage of walking tracks, parks and reserves, shared paths, cycleways, library and the mountain bike trails. When we asked people what's it like living in Rotorua these days, the general sentiment was that pride is low, positivity is low, and a sense of connection is lower than it has been. However, our unique culture and our history is something that most people resonate with. 43% of our respondents said they'd prefer to be living somewhere other than Rotorua, and that was now, so reminding you in October and November of last year. And the 65 plus and the Te Arawa Māori were more like or less likely to want to live elsewhere, so they were more satisfied with Rotorua as it is now. Interestingly, 50% of nuclear families, so your traditional families, say that they'd prefer to live elsewhere. This is something for you. This is the heart of why my team undertook this, is to understand the usage of our communication channels and to see where we need to improve. What we can see is that 83% of respondents say they hear news or information about council on social media. That includes our channels and other social media channels. What is significantly more than other channels is online and websites, so those that are shared by other community pages and influencers, and the Daily Post, which includes both their online reach and their printed publication at 47%. Not surprisingly, in a connected community, word of mouth accounts for 46% of communication about council matters. So how are we going to use this? I know you're dying to know. When we have fairly small budgets and we've got a broad cross-section of the community to talk to about specific things, we'll be using some of the insights to refine not just the content of how much we articulate and the language we use to talk to different groupings in our communities. We'll also use it to refine channels, because we know which channels certain sections of our community are less likely to use, which will be a complete waste of time. And then knowing that certain groupings of our communities are big followers of our channel, that means we can adjust the frequency by which we are putting out a particular message or a particular campaign. I think you'll see by just having scratched the surface here today that Te Kimihanga also provides another data set for council staff, and that will be used alongside other research like the Residents' Experience Monitor that I mentioned to inform decision making across the organisation, to get a bit of a deeper dive into attitudes about parking and open spaces and pensioner housing and some of those things. Oh, and that is the end. I will now, through you, Madam Chair, take questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I think you've covered that incredibly well. It's very interesting insights into our community and also how they view council, and I think it's also very valuable information for us to know where we need to provide further information, and also in what areas and with whom we need to better connect with. So are there any questions? Yep, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Suzanne, for your report. An observation from me is that there's lots going on in this organisation for the community, and it's impossible, I suggest, to get all of it out there for the community to understand the breadth and depth of the work that goes on for their benefit. I wonder, though, whether social media really serves the purpose, or whether it should be, as other cities do. I get the Queenstown newsletter, something more in depth, something you can sit down and digest, that's missing in our artillery, if you like. I just wondered what your thoughts are on what that might look like.
Thank you, Councillor. I do have some thoughts on that. This survey identified that we're only about, I think, 33% of people read or receive our e-pānui, so we know we've got work to do on growing that subscriber base. Obviously not just with our faithful, but with people who don't follow council channels or are interested in local politics anywhere else. The other thing I will just bring to your attention as part of reaching diverse audiences and communicating what is relevant is we have started a series of quite targeted newsletters. So one is for JP's group called Development Download, and that's going out to like real estate agents, property developers, a bunch of others in the development and building sector to keep people up to date, not only with changes in government legislation, but growth of new developments, and also profiling some of our key staff like Simon Bell, who's now in a development enablement role. And we plan to do more of that, and we plan to do that in such a way that people are able to subscribe on our website to those targeted newsletters that are of interest to them. And I think, look, we are always happy to hear other suggestions and to talk with you about how we can improve.
Thank you very much. There appears to be no... Oh, Councillor Lee and then Councillor Waru.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just thought I might be able to assist with a definition, a working definition that you could perhaps use for middle age. My understanding is that middle age is 5 years older than you are.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll consider using that on the moving forward.
Very, very valuable contribution. Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe te manukura, sorry. Ka pai. Thank you, Councillor Lee, for your assistance there, I suppose. Hoi anō. Suzanne, great to see that, and I can tell you I've been through it a million times because you just were speaking to it so easily, it's ingrained in your brain. The thing I wanted to ask, which was there's some real interesting stuff there, some hard stuff there to take too, to be honest. But now that it's come to that point, if you had another chance to add a few more questions or you know, a few different ways of gathering some more information, would you have done it, and what could have some of those been?
It's a bit like how long is a piece of string, to be quite honest, Councillor. Look, along the way we did work out some things that we would do better. So, for example, we always test all of our communications for viewing on mobile, because that is, you know, how a lot of people get their information these days. We would probably use some narrower age ranges, because while age wasn't the core factor that we needed to define the subject groupings or the community groupings we were looking for, to use the 5 years older than you are definition of Councillor Lee, there is quite a lot of difference between 35 and 40, and we probably would look at using something that is a little bit more targeted moving forward. Our resident experience monitor uses a much tighter age demographic, so we feel that that will be covered. I guess the other thing that we probably really need to work on is, and this is a challenge for all councils and pretty much all engagement teams, is finding people under 20. They are just largely not that interested in local politics, so our challenge is to make it interesting, to make it relevant, and to continue to develop channels such as TikTok and some of the YouTube things where we're going to find younger people and hear from them. And I think finally, this is an ongoing piece of work for us, but there are a lot of renters. Housing is the most unaffordable it has ever been. We need to work harder with our Homes and Thriving Community teams, with other community engagement groups, to make sure that we are meeting people who are doing it hard in renting.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's sort of a nice segue into my next question, if I can, around, I think it was that figure, well, I think it was a 50%, kind of hit me a bit hard there, that would rather live would rather live elsewhere. Of that 50%, I don't know if you have any more insights into that particular kōrero, but what were the reasons, if that was the feeling, what were the reasons as to why they would do that, and why haven't they followed that then?
Okay, well, there's two questions there, and again, this is quite an extensive sort of deck, so I'm probably better to answer that separately as a follow-up from this meeting and give you that deck. But quite simply, again, coming back to community safety, which we saw was important to 85% of people, concern about the management of emergency housing, and concern about you know, gangs and that sort of thing. So those were, off the top of my head, those core drivers. We didn't, I'd have to go back to our data set to see why people hadn't moved away, but if I was to make an assessment, I would say it's because people here are connected to whānau and they want to stay connected to whānau.
Thank you, Suzanne. I find it really interesting. Just that comment, you know, those things that were done to us that were out of our control are still kicking us in the right now. So it's interesting to see, and I'm glad that, you know, we've got it right really around trying to have a focus on our community safety. Because that seems to be, I think that was the biggest stat I saw just quickly, was 85% all agreed. That was probably pretty much number one on the list. So thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. I might ask Andrew to provide some comments as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for all your comments so far. Thank you, Suzanne, for the data, and really appreciate it. I think it's really important to take away from this that firstly, that's a baseline, and it offers us a good opportunity to measure a point in time. It's also important to remember this was October last year, and so sentiments will change over time. The really useful part about having a baseline is that you can then track your progress as you make changes and then measure the impact of those changes. So I'm really pleased to see that there's a lot of support around this table for collecting that data, and I'm keen to see that continue forward as we continue to track data and track our performance to see the outcomes, both of actions that we take, but also the experiences that that we suffer the impact for that aren't our choices, as Councillor Waru mentioned.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, did I see you had a question? No, and we'll take a question from Councillor Lee, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, for your indulgence. And on a slightly more serious note, it's a really insightful report, and thank you for that. There's a few eyebrows went up when I was looking at some of those statistics, and a little bit sobering in places, and I do appreciate the work that's been done on that, and pretty helpful for us going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Chair. Thank you very much for your work, Suzanne. Very helpful and, as Councillor Lee said, very sobering. I just wonder, Your Worship, do you think this qualifies as robust evidence that could be used with certain government departments moving forward? Sorry, fair enough if you want to call that question out of order. I just thought, thank you. No question required.
Very valid question. We might ask Suzanne.
Through you, Madam Chair. What this is, as our Chief Executive said, a snapshot in time. Bear in mind that we were asking these questions to gather key drivers of the subject groupings or the community groupings we're looking to establish. That said, it's 1,260 people as a sample, so yes, it is robust. What I would remind you of is that we are going out with other data sets, such as our resident experience monitor, which will not only benchmark community attitudes and perceptions of our council against other councils, but also some custom questions that enable us to, again, get another view on community safety, access to housing, and those things. So I guess we also have, access through the community, through Jean-Paul's team, through .love's data and other data sets. So what I would probably say is that this survey provides some quantitative and some qualitative feedback on the bigger picture of the issues we're addressing.
Thank you, Worship. Could I just say, like everyone, I'm slightly concerned about some of the answers, but also the amount of feedback. But could I just remind that I also think that the general public is being election-led to death. We've just gotten over a central government election not so long ago, and my God, that felt like it went on forever. We're lined up next year. People are being drummed in about the American election, which seems to have been from day one after the last election. So I can certainly feel there's probably an element of election fatigue around and representative fatigue around. So I certainly hope we get more responses moving forward, but I still think it's a pretty good result around. So thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Madam Chair, through you, if I may, I would just like to thank my marketing team, Catherine Rose and Fiona Cameron, who have done an incredible amount of work on this. Their insights and their expertise we're very fortunate to have, and if we had taken this piece of work out externally, it would have been between $60,000 and $80,000. So I think, we've built capacity, we've built capability, and I'm really pleased to see that the councillors understand the value of this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, and of course to your wider team who you have mentioned as well. So we will now move to our progress report for Te Aroha Partnerships. We are on page 43 of our agenda, and I'd like to invite Gina to the table to overview the report.
Tēnā tātou. I'll take my report as read and invite any questions. I did want to add, though, that, and I apologise that this should have been in the written, but in anticipation that there may be questions. The working group that is facilitated by an external facilitator and includes representatives from Te Tatau o Te Aroha and from the council is still carrying on with their work. We had hoped that we would have a final report provided by the end of last year. We didn't receive the first draft until February. Fortunately, now that I'm back in my regular role, it means I'm able to pick it up. But once the report is endorsed by the Working Party, which will require both Council and Te Tātou to provide comments, then it will come back to Council and also to Te Tātou. I'm quite hopeful of getting that done before my leaving date, but we'll see where we get to in terms of whether agreement is reached early enough.
Thank you very much, Gina. Are there any questions on the Te Aroha report, Te Aroha Partnerships report? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, bottom of page 44, Gina, I wish you well in the future, and thank you for your massive contribution to our organisation. No, I wish you well on that in the future. Can I, the question I have really is probably not at yourself or at the staff or Te Amorangi or anything, it's really at probably us politicians. I've been talking to many of our members and they're wanting to get together with us in time from Te Tātou. They're feeling very disappointed that it's gone 18 months now and really the togetherness could be far better than it is now. And I think really it is us, we the politicians. I think we RLC, we've broken our protocol. It's not BAU, it's not business as usual. And we've heard earlier in other debates how they could have been a good contribution to us for things that we've done in the 18 months we've been going. But I think we've broken a protocol. There was an agreement that members would be on our standing committees, some of our standing committees, but that has not been progressed, and some are feeling really let down. They're feeling let down, and they wonder what worth is it for them. But they may come and tell us themselves. Actually, they have visited, they have come and presented here, and they've expressed these things. And I've raised this often, but I've just sort of don't often raise it now, but I just mention it here in the report. And I also see where, Andrew, you wanted to, on the top of page 45 there, get to know Te Aroha a lot more and everything. I'd hate you to start with some of them being very unhappy and expressing that, but like anything else, when you do get together with them, I'd like us to be there so that we can sort of support you, support Te Aroha, but it didn't become business as usual. After the election, it kind of just stopped, and they're out there. They can be a massive support to a lot of things we do, but they're feeling let down. So I need to express that, and again, wish you all the best in the future there, Gina. Kia ora.
Thank you. We might just see if Gina has any response to that, but I do just want to remind councillors that as part of the agreement of Te Tātou Te Aroha, it was meant to be reviewed after every election. This is the only time that it has been reviewed since its establishment. So I think that that is a really positive thing. It would be coming up 10 years now, or almost 10 years since it's been established. It's very timely that we do this, and I think taking the time to do so and allowing our partners to contribute to that as well is very important. But Gina, did you have any response to that?
Yeah, look, I would say that both Te Tātou and the Council committed to the Working Party process to carry out the review. I think, we would also be disappointed at how long it's taken to get a draft report. I don't accept that that is the fault of the Council. I think that all of the parties have been working their best to try and progress things, but it takes as long as it takes. But certainly I have reached out a number of times to the facilitator to offer support to try and move things along. I think that Council has tried to work hard to provide positive engagement through the process. We did receive the draft report in February, and so we do need to provide some comments back to the facilitator, and that's sitting with me at the moment. But I think that the delay, not getting a draft report until this, relatively late this year, has been a significant factor. In terms of the while there remains, I guess, a gap in terms of the governance relationships, I would note, and it's in my report, that there is still operational engagement carrying on with Te Tatau, as there should be. So we have engaged most recently in this reporting period over, for example, the Rotorua Lakes strategy and looking at how we might progress that into a more detailed action plan. We work together in terms of the Rotorua Wayfinding project. We're talking with them about that, and also in terms of welcoming communities. So there is still, quite a bit of engagement at an operational level, but I do accept that that governance space is still sitting in flux as we wait for the working group to report back.
Thank you. We'll take a final question from Councillor Waru, and then Andrew also has some comments.
Tēnā koe te manukura, tēnā koe Gina.
Tēnā koe.
Ka nui te mihi ki a koe. E kore au e whai ngā koro rā ko te pai hoi rā koro hiko. Engari, kai te hiha au te pātai atu ki a koe mo te ahua ki te aomorangi me ana mahi. Whakaoko ako I roto I te kaunihira. So just around the reo classes and waiata classes and all that. I know you've given a little bit of a update on that, but are they being well received? What's the sort of spread of those who are attending? Is it Māori, Pākehā, or Harani? It's just good to know a bit more detail around that, if that's okay.
I can probably provide some numbers after this. I'll check with my team. In the annual plan, we did remove some of the training budget and encourage the staff to look at ways, and this is across the board, ways to bring training in-house. And so my team's really taken that on board and has both extended our Waiata Te Reo Māori Koa and Tikanga program, as well as we're developing a number of training resources that we can lead internally. So in terms specifically of the weekly staff Waiata classes, we also have included pōhiri training. So we have a lot of staff who want to know how to engage in a pōhiri, who want to understand how to stand, where to stand, and what's going on. And so in anticipation of Andrew's pōhiri, we instigated weekly pōhiri classes, and that has certainly grown the confidence of our staff to participate, which is really great. And as well, the Waiata sessions are always very, very popular. One of the things about the Waiata sessions is they provide a really welcoming, simple way for staff to engage in pronunciation, a little bit of the history of the district. It means that we can provide the necessary support for elected members and formal events when those occur. But it's a really nice way of introducing people to Te Ao Māori, to the Māori worldview. Super popular. Our Reo Māori classes, which we've managed to hold on to, also extremely popular. We could hold 4 or 5 more classes a week, and they would be well attended by staff, because there is this demand, particularly around basic pronunciation, appropriate language in the workplace, greeting people, things like that. When people go to community events and they feel like they should be able to introduce themselves appropriately in Te Reo Māori, those classes are really important. Excellent,
excellent. Ka nui te hariko au taku ngākau. In that too, so I was going to mention when Andrew was, at the pōhiri, and he was welcomed into the whānau here. I was very proud of the way that we conducted ourselves in terms of the pōhiri process. We had a huge turnout. I don't think I've seen that for a long time. That be from the staff. Yes, sure, we've had Te Arawa Whanui come in here before and all that, and Nāti Pakau Harane. But that was iwi, mana whenua. There was also the backup from all the staff too, from all the different departments. So this just shows how much impact you're having on the staff here and the kaimahi here, and the messages are getting through. So whanui te mihi.
Look, having a good, strong cohort of staff who are comfortable in those kinds of formal processes is really important in terms of our reputation within Te Arawa. If whakauia people had attended that and they were the only ones carrying the event, it would have reflected poorly on the organisation and its commitment to training, to authentic engagement. And so the fact that staff are able to authentically engage, they know what to do, they know how to behave in formal situations is really important from a reputation perspective.
Ka pai, Gina, and just one more question too. So just within the, you just spoke about the communications and all that, and Suzanne's just given her kōrero with all the insights and all that, and talking about targeted communications. Where, I suppose, do you see Te Aomorangi fitting into that plan, or Te Tatau for that matter?
We have worked, we work very closely with the comms and marketing team throughout not only that project but all of their projects. They're very open's not the right word. They always come and talk to us at an early stage in the development of their proposals to ensure that they're thinking about Māori audiences. So that team in particular is really effective in working with Te Aomorangi.
Thank you, Gina. And I suppose something to think about. I think, if I'm correct, 22% in that last insights survey that Suzanne just presented, kai te kōrero Māori te kāinga, 22% of that group. So I suppose that we might have to reflect that I roto I ngā mahi a te kaunihera. Just saying, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you very much. Did you have another quick question, Councillor Maxwell?
Just further to the kōrero, a bouquet to our rōpū that here doing the pōhiris and citizenship ceremonies and the things they do. I did try, as chair of Te Arawa Kapahaka, to try and encourage them to participate in our recent event, and personally I think they would have done well there. And no pressure, but the courthouse put in a rōpū, a very good performance they gave. There were 3 judges that were performing in there, an Indonesian girl, a couple of island people, and they gave a performance that was well appreciated by everyone there. But I know that our group here too would have done well, but that's a goal for the next time. Kia ora.
Thank you. I believe the Far North Council, including the Mayor, also had a rōpū in their regional kapahaka competition, so the pressure is definitely on. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your report, Gina. Your Worship, sorry, could I just clarify from either Gina or Andrew? So sorry, now that the report's been filed, or sorry, been received, I take it a copy goes back to the Te Taro order, and then a copy will come back to the full council, or is it just our members from the working group?
At the moment, so it's a first draft. We've all been invited to provide comments. The facilitator will then reflect on those and either amend or not amend his report, and then once that's final, then it will come back to this council and also to Te Tatau. So we'll have to think about how we work through the recommendations and the advice that's in that report.
Thank you. And roughly, do you have an approximate time? Like, will it be the end of March, or do you think a bit later?
Well, I would like to at least have an initial presentation back to
end
the
of
council
April, sorry.
by the end of April. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
That's my target, though. I don't know if that's going to work for everyone else.
Thank you. Well, we'll close the questions and discussion, but Andrew would like to make some final comments as well.
I just want to take this opportunity because I'm not sure if I'll keep Gina for the next council meeting. So just in front of the council, wanted to express firstly my sincere thanks for the job you've done getting the council through the long-term plan process and all of the time since the departure of the previous chief executive. I know you've earned a huge amount of respect throughout the organisation and around this table. I am very, very sorry that the phone call I received before I started from you to say that you were leaving. I would like to put on the record that I haven't accepted Gina's resignation, to be clear, and I have heard that she's committed to do some key things for us all before she leaves. I won't share the details, but I am intending to keep Gina connected to this organisation so we can continue to tap on the vast experience and her personal capability that she brings. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, Gina. It's a massive loss to all of us around this table, but you're going to be a great credit to Te Arawa, to this community, and to this council. So thank you very much. Go well, but we will miss you.
Thank you. If I can also add, I haven't had the opportunity to acknowledge the support from the exec team and the elected members over the last 5 months. Certainly, I was quite taken aback and sort of apprehensive about the role when I first came into it, but the support that I received from all of the elected members, particularly the Mayor, and also the executive, has been, has really helped us all to get to this point today. Certainly the LTP was a major project that we stepped into, and I'm really proud of the way in which our team pulled together to support you in the preparation of the document that you require. I've found it really hard to make the decision to accept the role in Wellington because I do really love this community and this organisation, and I have so much excitement for the changes and the fresh thinking that Andrew is bringing already to our organisation. I think, I'm really proud of where this organisation is going. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Well, thank you very much, Gina. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report, and I'd also like to put a vote of thanks on the table for Gina Rangi for her contribution, not only as the interim chief executive, but also as the Manahotu Te Arawa. Have a seconder as by Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of our meeting today. I'd like to ask Councillor Councillor Lee. Yes,
so, with your indulgence, I'm a little bit troubled by an item that was raised in urgent items by Councillor O'Brien. I'm a little troubled because he's obviously a little troubled. And if I might exercise the right of reply and perhaps try and respond to the concerns that Councillor O'Brien made, I think it might be helpful going forward.
I don't think Councillor O'Brien mentioned you by name, so if you wish to have a discussion with him outside of this, I think that would be the best place to do that. Thank you.
He certainly inferred me, and I think it's pretty obvious to anybody that was involved that he was referring to me, and quite serious issues were raised concerning codes of conduct and questions about whether a councillor has a duty of care and whether that duty of care may have been breached. These are pretty serious issues, I would suggest.
As mentioned, he did not mention you by name, and I have not received any complaints or any code of conduct in regarding this issue. So I appreciate that you wish to signal that you were not involved or, yeah, but I think that this is outside of the scope of this meeting, so I'd like to conclude it, please.
As you wish.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, would you like to close this meeting with the karakia?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kia whakahiri o te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai, haumi e, hui e, tāi kia. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you, everyone. I declare the meeting closed.